Welcome to the Biz Kids podcast. We're back for another episode to learn about entrepreneurship, get inspired, and learn how to make profits today. So our guest with us today is Michelle Jacobik. Did I get that right?
You sure did.
Nice. Michelle, I met Michelle last year at a mastermind event that she was putting on, and had the opportunity to sit through 2 days with her, and she just took us through the process of like looking at our business, getting more detailed, and it was a great experience, and I think she's going to be an awesome coach for us today. Michelle, what we always like to start off with is your 60-second pitch. We teach kids you need to always know your 60-second pitch right off. So in 60 seconds, tell us who you are and what you do.
I'll do it in 10. I help entrepreneurs actually unplug their cash flow and fire up their profits.
Awesome. And I didn't mention that she's also an author. She has the book, The Path to Profit, or The Path to Profits.
Yes.
And so we have some great experience from her today. So as we like to always kind of look at kind of your childhood, were you inspired as a kid to be an entrepreneur?
Gosh, no, I definitely was not inspired, but I was definitely, I think sparked, like something came down and lightning struck me or something, right? I had a very humble upbringing, JD. My parents both worked for the municipality where I lived. My dad worked in public works, totally a blue collar guy. My mom, right out of high school, went and worked for the city and the municipality, and she ended up in the finance department, right? As like an admin, and then working her way into like the budgeting pieces of like managing a town. And so they didn't have friends that had businesses. Nobody in our family was an entrepreneur, but I had this little spark like as a young child. And for me, I think it was easy for me to dream up ideas and ways to create money, right? And I also had parents who they didn't hand me everything. They didn't have the capacity to hand me anything I wanted. So when I wanted something, it was like, how are you going to do that? Right. And so a lot of times I heard, we can't afford that. And that struck me to say, okay, well, if you can't afford that, like, how can I create it? And thus the entrepreneur bug was born, even though I didn't know it. For me, what that looked like was like obviously at 6 or 8 years old, I was like, I had a lemonade stand, right? And I had the best lemonade. I had the pink lemonade versus the yellow lemonade. And Country Time, when they came out with the pink, I'm like, I'm going to distinguish my lemonade stand from the other three in the neighborhood. And I started really just like honestly being able to create money with a personality and something different, add in a cookie or a little popcorn, and all of a sudden, someone that had nothing when they woke up in the morning, all of a sudden end of the day and had $3.50, right? And then I'd get up and do it again. And I think that was really my first taste of entrepreneurship. And I remember at 10 thinking my dad loved to fish and he would take us fishing on the weekends. And I was like, maybe I could just go like dig up some night crawlers and sell those for $1 a dozen, right?
Nice,
and I'm thinking, geez, the earth is just going to give me the ability to create abundance and profitability, right? So at 10, I started a night crawler business, and I would literally like go out at night with the flashlight, grab all the night crawlers. I hated the little suckers, but they made me money, and I would put 12 of them in, and I'd have like an on your honor system. And of course I added that, to my lemonade stand as well. But now I had 2 streams of revenue, right? So I had the lemonade stand, I had the night crawlers. And then fast forward, I think I was probably 11. I had to be 10 or 11. Burger King had a backyard fair kit that kids could get, and they basically gave you like they sent you this entire kit for free, and you had the Burger King crowns. I mean, it was such a good marketing ploy on their part. And you basically created a backyard fair, and they had posters to market it and different things and some suggestions about how you could set up different games and then host it in the neighborhood. And so my brother and I sat down and literally started brainstorming like, okay, if we do like hopscotch and we do this or that or hula hoop contest, it's all like 10-year-old stuff, right? But we had to get out there and peddle and market it because he didn't want to have a fair that nobody showed up to, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, we worked the marketing game. We ended up having like a half day fair. We charged like $1 for people to come. And then, we had like different prizes. The prizes, Burger King gave like coupons for free burgers or whatever. And I just think like, I think back to my childhood, and I love that you even asked this question because there wasn't anybody around me. I thought everybody thought the way that I thought. But when I realized that I could create things, create money, create a business, create an experience for people, right? I knew that I had something special, and I didn't even know it until I was in my 20s, right? That really meant entrepreneurship.
And my parents were the same. My parents were both educators, and they didn't ever had the thought of starting a business or have that interest. And I sold my mom's cucumbers out of her garden to get money for the ice cream truck. So that's how it all started for me. Do you
Yeah.
remember what you were charging for your lemonade at that time?
Oh gosh, it was probably like started at a dime, and then it went to a quarter, and then obviously like as you get older, most people, it's funny because my kids always had lemonade stands, and I remember my son was like the worst abuser of this. People would ask for change and he'd be like, nobody asked for change, right? He was selling for 50 cents, and I think like 1 in 20 people would ask for change. Most people would say keep the change. But I think at the high I was at 25 cents.
And
Definitely.
we did a show the other last year, and these two girls show up to do lemonade, and I said, "How much is your lemonade going to be?" And they said $7 a cup, and I said, "What? $7?" I'm like, "I think that might be a little high." They're like, "No, we feel good about it." And I was completely wrong. They had a line getting their lemonade all day, and they made over $1,000 on their first lemonade stand. Can
Amazing.
you imagine that?
Amazing. Yeah, I love that. And I love that they were solid in their value, right? Because somewhere along the line, that's what happens a lot as entrepreneurs. We dilute our value because either we do it to ourselves mindset wise, or somebody tells us that we likely can't sell it for that. And I'm a firm believer in business that you have to listen to your own internal voice and in terms of like value. And until you have the metrics that says whether you can or can't, you can accept advice and guidance, but you have to take that step to test it out. Because if they want $7, maybe they get to, it's a cup that they get to keep and refill, or, maybe they draw on their cup. Who knows what these girls were thinking? But I love that they actually let their own metrics, their own result be the driver in what they were going to do. And who knows, maybe they had already done it before and were able to get $7.
Yeah. And well, they did do fresh squeeze. So they had the lemons there, they cut them, they had the squeezer. And then they did if you brought the cup back, you got a refill for $5.
Nice. So
And,
good.
and it helped that you're in Florida and it was the middle of the summer and people were dying of thirst. It was on 4th of July. So no one was really worried about, $7. They just were thirsty. So it
Yeah.
worked out well.
Well, and I think about it. We go to a concert or somewhere outdoors, right? Or even an airport, and like what would normally be a water, if we like just bought a case of water, it'd be like, 12 cents a piece. But when you're at the airport, it's $7 for a water. You're at a concert or like, an outdoor fair, it's $10 for a water. And does it tick us off? Yeah. But the truth is that we pay for the water.
We do. I told them these are Disney prices.
Okay, Disney prices. I love it.
So as you started to kind of progress and when growing up, did you go off to college? Did you have a side hustle that you did during those years?
Yeah, so I actually started working a full-time job is like literally the day that I turned 16. I had it lined up 2 weeks before. And again, my poor mom, like she had invested years into gymnastics and dance, and really had to pull pennies together to, have my brother and I involved in activities. And I remember like 2 weeks before I turned 16 saying, I'm quitting everything. I want to work full time. Like I saw that as like my freedom to being able to buy what I want, have what I want, buy the clothes that I want, and not be told, we can't do that. And so I worked full time. And then when, I was a senior in college and not college, high school, and came home. And I just remember thinking like, I don't know that I'm going to be able to go to college. And I remember like wanting to come to Florida. I've always loved Florida. I lived in Connecticut, and I had this vision of like I went to like the guidance counselor and they did all my skills. And of course I worked in retail at that point. So they were like, you've got great retail skills and selling skills and marketing skills. And so I landed on I'm sorry, not financial, fashion merchandising.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, one, it'll get me to Florida. I wanted unlimited bottles of Panama Jack. That's all I cared about. And I remember coming home being excited after a year of not really knowing when other kids around me knew what they wanted to do. Remember, there was no entrepreneurship programs. No one talked
Sure.
about entrepreneurship as like a field. And I remember coming home and saying to my parents, like, I found something and I found a college. And they were like, great. How are you going to do that? And I remember getting like really mad, like, really? You didn't plan for college, right? And I just two things happened, right? One, I got angry, and then it was like this whole like, well, I'll show the world that I can do it and I don't need any help. The other thing was I also assigned a story, I think, to whatever that situation was. I carried that story. It was like, oh, we must be poor, scarcity, whatever, bad, not good money management, and I'm never going to be like that, right? So that story fueled me into a community college classroom, which is, again, I felt like I had a chip on my shoulder because I'm like, this is the level of education that I'm going to get because I had parents that didn't plan, right? That was the story. And I remember my first day feeling like a lot of shame around it. Like, I can't believe that I'm not able to go to a state school outside of the Connecticut, have my dream college, blah, blah, blah. And I remember my first day, one student walked in that was supposed to be going to USC, one was supposed to be going to California. And I'm like, what are you doing here? Right. And they're like, oh, my parents got divorced. I can't go to college now. Or, I got accepted to 3, but we couldn't afford it. And I thought, wow, I'm not the only person who landed in a situation that this was going to be the choice. And I turned down, not off, but turned down the noise around this second rate education. Well, let me tell you what happened. In the community college, I had the best experience because the professors that I had, I did a business administration track. So I had marketing, I had advertising, labor law, all the things around business, right? Was accounting 1 and 2, economics. All of my professors were entrepreneurs. Every single one in the classroom that was teaching, it was the CPA in town, it was the consultant in town, it was the lawyer in town that handled corporate law. And I learned from people. It was my first taste of learning from people that had businesses. And I had not a second rate education, I had a top-notch education. And I had professors like Professor Carl Schwartz, who years later I ended up hiring to be a consultant in the company that I had bought. And he split the classroom into 2 segments. He basically read a case study of a manufacturing plant with 400 employees, and they were in dispute. And he basically said, this half of the room is management, this half is labor, and you're going to negotiate a contract. That's your semester. And I was on the management side. So here I am, 18 years old, and I have to go get quotes for 400 people on health insurance and workers' comp and all these. I had no idea how to do any of this stuff. But I had real life experience. And I think for me, having people that were in those authority mentor roles, like yourself with BizKidz, it's like, and the other business owners that come alongside in this community that you're building, there's so much to be said for the energy of sharing our experiences, because it's that 1 or 2 people, like I will tell you, they are the people that when I go back, I'm most grateful for in my life, because I had never had an experience of somebody with business experience. And I learned so much more than I would in a book, on a podcast. And today I love being that person for kids.
Absolutely. And that's I didn't have this. I had the same kind of a incident or not incident, experience in school where I didn't have those opportunities to get into businesses. And I was always driving down the road and looking at businesses going, I wonder how they make money. How do they operate? So we actually started BizKidz field trips where we actually take kids into local businesses and we show them. We're not worried about like what widget they make, but how do they make it and how do they make money off of it? How do they pay for the employees? How does the operations run? So I love the fact that you got that kind of education that got you that hands-on experience to see how local businesses were thinking.
Yeah. And I think at that age too, like, especially with young kids and even like me being 18 at that point, I was very inquisitive, right? And the thing is, a lot of times I wasn't in an environment where I could ask questions, right? And I was somebody who always asked questions in every segment of my life, from religion, I challenged everything, right? And so instead of it being seen as a negative, it was like an invited opportunity to have dialogue. And I think that creating those playgrounds for kids to be able to ask good questions, challenge the norms, right? And like the girls did with the lemonade price, it's like, no, like they'll challenge the norms. I think that those places are where they get the most growth. And it's the environment where they understand that they don't have to think like everybody else. They can be critical thinkers And critical thinking starts with asking the right questions.
Now, do you have kids?
I sure do. Yeah. So
And
I
did they
have.
have that entrepreneur spirit?
Oh yeah. So my son is an entrepreneur to heart. Absolutely. He's actually an officer in the Air Force and still running his two businesses. Like on a cyber warfare team, stationed overseas and still running a marketing business and doing other things that create money. And he's like, "Is something wrong with me that is it like a drive or a passion? What is it?" And I'm like, "No, it's something that once you have it, it's hard to give up, right?" And my daughter, she also is an entrepreneur. Her and her husband birthed a glass company in South Carolina, High Country Glass, 4 years ago. And so, they're in the birthing stages, 4 years in, and experiencing all the things. But really, it's beautiful to watch them navigate what it looks like. Like it's perfectly normal. And both of them started businesses in high school, both of them. And I'll tell you where that comes from, right? They would hear me say, "I'll pay for what you need, not for what you want." And I could have paid for anything at that point, right? I could have given them anything, but I knew it wasn't going to serve them. So my son was playing three sports when he wanted the $300 pair of cleats, right? For soccer and baseball and basketball. I was like, "Look, I'm going to pay for what you need. I'll give you the $75 for a great pair of cleats. If you want the $300 ones, you have to create it, like figure it out." And they did. Right? They babysat, they had their lemonade stands, they sold stuff. My son was like a Gary V with the trash talks. He goes to yard sales and picks things up and then resells. My son was in that for a while. And then he birthed a t-shirt company in high school. And then also he learned to navigate that Nike has a warranty on their sneakers, on their cleats. And if you have any damage at all within 12 months, even a stitch, one day I walk in, he's on the phone with the claims department, Nike, and the kid never paid for another pair of cleats again, and started actually like filing claims for other kids that didn't know about it, and then got Nike to actually donate like 10 pairs of the best style cleats for the Haitian kids on the team, because he's like, everybody should have quality cleats, right?
Yeah.
So it's been fun to watch them navigate, but it really came from this foundation of, "I'll pay for what you need, not for what you want." How can you create the difference? And also shifting my language. And I'll say this, like one of the things that I think is so important is that parents never say, "We can't afford that." When we do, right, I teach how to shift your financial DNA. That's the first thing. It's not that I say be willy-nilly with your budget, give your kids everything they want. That's not what I'm saying. But when we say we can't afford that, you're cementing that truth right now in this current moment, but also in the future. And it causes so much damage because they assign a story, like I did, that then creates money scarcity and all these things that have to be, the wounds that have to be worked out and healed. And the truth is, the language should simply be, how could we create that? What opportunities could you create to make that happen, right? Instead of, "We can't afford that." And I work with a lot of divorced parents. And when that transition happens, it's very challenging, right? There's a financial reset, everything's split in half. There's, a lot more to navigate with the kids. And it's one of the biggest things that I really, really, really work with people on is the language. Because what we say here and then what we say here is what gets cemented and really can make it put a lot of heartache, even on the driven entrepreneur, the youth, the young entrepreneur that's coming up, and they're carrying that stuff with them. So, yeah.
So what advice would you give to moms on inspiring your kids to take that challenge to go out there and try something that they're afraid of or scared to do?
Yeah. So for the moms,
For the moms, well, and the moms and dads, any of the parents that are kind of looking like, "Hey, I have, my kid has this idea, but I'm scared because I've never done a business or I've never started a business," and they feel that kind of uncomfortableness of like trying something.
yeah. So what my first thing is find something just like BizKids, right? Take the journey with your child together. Like you don't have to have it all figured out. You can say, "Hey, I don't have this figured out and we're going to learn together, but I'm going to support you and I'm going to help you navigate," and get excited that you have a child that is seeing things a little bit differently. And so I think that the first thing is really leaning in and knowing that you don't have to have it all figured out for your kid to succeed. What you have to do is pour into their dreams and help them create the vision for the thing that they want to bring forward, right? And the other thing that I would say is part of entrepreneurship is failure. And so being okay, I actually feel that a lot of times in sports, right? Like kids aren't always going to win, but you've got the parents that are like, we got to win, we got to win, we got to win. I feel like if you can come into entrepreneurship and use the journey to let them understand that just there's discernment in failing, there's no failure. It's all lessons, right? And so I think that there's a beautiful invitation for parents to step into the teaching moments that actually are afforded to us when kids want to step into the journey of entrepreneurship.
And I had a mom pull me aside, and she said to me, she goes, "Don't tell my girls this, but I love this program because I get to spend time with them on the weekends, and we all work on all the products during the week." She goes, "They were like doing their sports programs and their music, and I was never involved with them, but now I'm right next to by their side the whole week." And she goes, "I love this."
That is
So
beautiful. That's a beautiful reflection. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So is it harder to coach your kids or coach one of your clients?
Definitely the kids. Definitely the kids. And it's usually what happens is I'll see an element of something that they witnessed. So, as an example, I go to my daughter's in South Carolina and I go into the bathroom and I see affirmations sharpied on the mirror, on the bathroom mirror. And I thought, with all the mom guilt and all the things that I carried up for a lot of years, I was like, I taught her that. I taught her to be able to affirm and stand in her place of gratitude, a gratitude jar at my son's, like all the things that, we implemented, the practices that we implemented that were the muscles that helped us get through the hard times or, win, like celebrate and be in gratitude for the good times. But yes, there are times where I'll like go to say something and then I have to remember, like, I'm not their only, I always have taught them they need a team of advisors, right? So I am not the only advisor. The goal is to put the village around you, to have a trusted insurance agent, have a trusted business advisor, have a trusted accountant that handles tax strategy, not just churning out your tax return. And so for me, the invitation is to know that they've heard those things and that generally when they're wanting to get additional support, like my son, he did so many things that I didn't even know. Literally at one point, he had started a training company, like personal training. And when COVID happened and all of the parents were concerned, there were no sports, these kids are ready to go collegiate. They want them to be chosen for collegiate sports. And everything got closed. And my son was like, not on my watch. So he started a training camp and it was, March, but he had them outside by April, got the roster from all the sports teams for the parents, called the kid, said, put your parent on the phone, pitched the parent about why they should invest. And he would do it outdoors, this and that. And he literally was like doing 10 grand a months. And he was 19. And so the only time he asked me for support, he did ask about insurance. He did ask me about, a waiver. Can you look over the waiver that I signed so that I don't get sued? And then when he decided to take and go and negotiate like a 10,000 square foot space that he was going to sublease from a gym that had the programs that had gotten shut down, he did ask me to come to the table and be in that meeting because that would require a legal contract outside, whatever. And I'm grateful for the times where they do allow me to come in, but they are definitely harder clients than my clients. And I will say, I think they know more than me. I think that in the age of technology, and they're both well versed on ChatGPT, and they've got their board of advisors in chat. And again, I've taught them that they didn't have any idea. And as I've learned over the last year, I worked very deep dive with another advisor that, prior to ChatGPT, had 2 patents on AI before ChatGPT. I worked with them for a year weekly. So everything I was learning, I was, transferring to my kids, transferring to my clientele, and they know so much more than me. It's so interesting. I think that they don't know that they know more than me, but they do. They have a lot more at their fingertips.
Well, then you did your job, right, Mom?
Yes.
So that's good. Good.
Exactly.
So what's next for you? Coaching. You have the book. Where do you want your entrepreneur journey to go?
Yeah, so I love that. And so right now, I do a lot of speaking. So, this morning I was on 2 other podcasts. I spoke to a couple of teams teaching other entrepreneurs specifically around the money. I love getting them out of the financial frenzy. These pieces of cash flow projections and having a personal budget. The truth is that if you're an entrepreneur, your personal finances and your business are married. And that yet that isn't taught in school, right? Personal finance is an elective. It's not required in most schools. And so for me, my mission is, to come alongside of thousands and thousands and thousands of entrepreneurs and walk with them in the financial foundations aspect. So the path to profits, right, is my methodology and system. And so I teach it to teams. I just spoke with a group of realtors this morning, and as soon as I got off the call, I had like 60 people in my email asking for like the framework because they need it and they've been in business, but they're moving, closing to closing or commission to commission if they're in sales. And so for me, it's how do I take my knowledge of 37 years as an entrepreneur, right, and transfer that in this new model, right, of which is consultancy. And I think the difference between coaching and consultancy is you've got somebody who's for 37 years walked the talk, financial background. I owned an insurance agency, grew it to 12 million in sales and over 7,000 customers from nothing, and then took an exit so I could now sit and do this type of work with other business owners and help them collapse time or avoid some of those the minefields that are going to happen, the mines on the minefield that they don't know are going to happen. So for me, it's just more of being available for support. And whether that's through workshops or talks or private consultancy with companies, that's what I'm doing. I feel like every day I wake up and I'm like, use me, God, and it's working. So
Awesome. Well, we will put your information in the show notes. So anybody wants to get a hold of you or connect with you to learn more from you, I'm sure that they would love to do that. So as we move forward, into the next generation of entrepreneurs that are out there, we'd love to get you involved with them and see some of these kids' ideas that they have. If you want to get your kids involved with us, it's bizkidsusa.org. We're not just in Southwest Florida. We have the Biz Kids Hub, which is all nationwide, and you can get training on how to start. We give you the basics of how to help your kids start a business and get out there. So if you want to get involved with us, find us. Michelle, thanks for being here today. Is there any last words you have for us today?
no, just, you know what? Chase your dreams. Don't let blind people proofread your vision. If you dream it, you can do it. Just find support to get there.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us at the Biz Kids Podcast, and we will see you next time.